Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our class today on sketching and dissecting bleeding hearts. And tell us if you have any of these bleeding hearts blooming where you live. Anyway, this is known as Dicentra spectabilis, although it has been moved into a different genus called Lamprocapnos spectabilis. And so these are native to northeastern China, but they've been growing around the world. And of course, they are so beautiful. So these are our flowers. And this is the individual flower. And here's my dissecting materials. And so these guys have really intricate flowers. They are pollinated by big bumblebees, which are strong enough to get into the flower. And starting on the outside, this is the stem of the flower or the peduncle. And usually there are sepals that protect the early bud from frost. There's two sepals, but those fall off very early. In fact, I couldn't even find any in the youngest flowers here. So those are two sepals that fall off early. And then they have four petals, and we're going to dissect this in a minute. So there's two pink ones and then two white ones. And then inside are the male and female reproductive parts. So Jay says, not quite sharp on your monitor. Okay, well, let's see. I'm not sure if I can get that. It might be the darkness. I don't know. I think that's as much as I can get it. Let's see. Yep, that's the autofocus. Yeah, the autofocus is on. Okay, so that's about what we're going to have to deal with. So anyway, we are going to draw this flower. We're going to draw it larger than life. And then we're going to dissect it. And in case my dissection doesn't work, because it's pretty hard, I've got all the dissected parts over here on the side where you can't see them, just in case. Okay, and so first we're going to draw sort of a big version. Let me move this over, and this will be the one that if we have time that we will color in. And I use colored pencils. These are mostly my Prismacolor Very Thins. Although if I'm working larger, I will sometimes use these, which are my Derwent Color Soft. I love these for bigger pieces. Okay, but we're going to start with a pencil. So let's put a name to this first. All right, so now we're going to draw kind of a larger version of the flower so that it's pretty and we can color it in. And then we're going to dissect it. Okay. So when I start to draw something, I'm going to just make a line down the middle that kind of shows how big my whole thing is going to be. And so that's going to be sort of like the stem and then the petal area and then the white petal area. So it'll be kind of like so the stem and the pink petal area and the white petal area. That's about how big I'm going to make it. Okay. You can make yours bigger if you want. And you can take a screenshot even if you want. I took some screenshots that I'll show you in a minute. But so yeah, so the stem, and we're not going to spend too much time on that. It's a span. And then we've got this mirror image. And sometimes it's hard to draw mirror images, but we're not going to worry too much about it. But what happens is there's this little kind of a heart shape. And the whole heart goes all the way to here, but the pink petals only go here. And inside those pink petals are nectaries that make nectar for the bumblebees. And there's some really good videos online on YouTube showing this. But they have to be a pretty strong pollinator to be able to push these open. And in fact, kind of a cool story. Speaking of opening these, I don't know if this is too bright. Can you see that better? I don't know. Okay. If you open this about halfway, it'll show it's hard to do it exactly. Okay, there we go. Does anyone know the other common name for this plant? And it's based on what this looks like to some people right now. It's hard to do. Anybody know what this is called? Another name for this species? There it is. And if you look close, you might be able to tell better. The other name for this species is lady in a bath. Can you see her black head and her white neck and her two arms? You can even sort of see some breasts. Oops, I tore her apart. And then she's in this pink bathtub. Deb says it looks like an alien. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, so anyway, that's just a story there. Okay, so sometimes it's challenging to make mirror images, but basically the whole thing is like a heart. I'm not very good at making mirror images. In fact, a lot of times if I'm in the field and I'm drawing something, especially things that are complicated like a butterfly or insect, I might just draw one side to save me time. And often I'll draw this left side. I think that's just easier, being right-handed. So that's my heart shape. And you see, it looks fine when I'm looking at the paper, but then when I look at the monitor, it's not as exact. But anyway, so that's the heart-shaped structure that's white part underneath the pink petals. But now let's draw each petal, which is a little bit smaller than that heart shape. And so those petals, I'll draw it a little bit darker. It comes down and then it flips up kind of like that. And then it cuts over, allowing some of the white underneath to show through. All right. And we can always get rid of that if we want. Okay. And then the other one, let's see if I can make this a mirror image or not. Probably not, but that's okay. Important part is that we do see some of this white part. And there we go. Okay, so a little uneven, but close enough for government work, as they say. So those are the petals. So basically, we had the stem, and then we have two pink petals. I think I'll do this over here. There's two of the pink petals, which have the nectaries, which of course is what attracts the insects for pollination. Although I did read that these are pretty good at self-pollinating. Okay. And then underneath, we have the next parts, which we'll dissect in a minute. So anyway, this white part kind of goes like this. And then this part goes down here, kind of straight. And then it flares out into that sort of magenta area. And we'll talk about these parts when we dissect them. So you can see that. Or you can see it here. You could always take a screenshot too, maybe. Okay. Now we're going to start dissecting it, but I want to leave each one so we can see them. Okay, so now let's take off the outer pink petals. So, oh yeah, there were, I'm just going to make a dotted line to show that this is gone. But those are the two sepals. So this is really weird numbering. Most flowers that we know of are in parts of five, but this is a very interesting. In fact, I did mention, I think, that these are in the poppy family. And so here's a California poppy that's related to it. It's in the same family, but there are over 700 species in this family. But anyway, they are characterized by having two sepals and four petals. But this bleeding heart is very, very specialized anatomically compared to the California poppy, which is our state flower in California. And it's illegal to pick if you're in California, but I got this from a neighbor's garden. Okay, anyway, so now we are going to start dissecting it. And I am going to take those petals off sort of gently. You could keep working on this if you want. This is sort of the time-consuming part. So I find it's really educational. Oops. See, I knew I'd do that. Educational to dissect things, and it's fun, and kids love it too. Okay, so that's that. Now, here's what's left here. So when you're drawing a flower and thinking about it, you're usually thinking in the different whorls. So there's the whorl of sepals, the whorl of petals, and then the whorl of male parts and female parts. So the next whorl we're going to look at are the other petals. Well, it's actually the same whorl, technically, WHORL. So what we have to do is we're going to pull these off because this is the next whorl. We'll look at those in a minute. But we want to draw the other petals. So this enlarged part here is part of the petals. They're really, really specialized. Oops. That card's going to go over there. Okay. And so what we see here is this part. And so there's a kind of a pink area and then a yellowish area, and it's got this little flange on it. And then there's this expanded area that is kind of magenta colored. And if you look at it from the inside, it's really bright. So I'm going to draw it from the outside, though. Where should I draw that? Over here? Okay. So anyway, so that's this part. I might put a little arrow there. And so this part was hidden under the pink petals. And then this is the part we can see right here. So what we have here are, it's always hard to figure out where to put these. So what we have now here is two white petals. Again, really specialized. There aren't a whole lot of flowers, well, orchids, I guess, that have really specialized parts. And so I don't know where to put these. You can see that. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm totally off the page here. Sorry, I'm totally off the page. Okay. So I'm going to draw this one, and because that's the same thing here. So it kind of goes like this. And if I was going to draw it, I want to draw it the same size. Yeah. And then it narrows, and this is the part we see here. And then it gets wide again. But there's this flange that is very hard to see. Oh, right. I was going to show you on here. So that's, oh, now that I have autofocus on, it doesn't want to get closer. But see, this is the inside with that really cool magenta coloration. And then there's this flange, this flattened part that's kind of like the keel of a boat. Did I take a picture of that? Let's see. I think I took a picture of that. Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, so this is what we had. Can you see that? This is what we had when we first took the pink petals off. So the pink petals are on top of this structure. And then these are the other two petals that we're drawing now, and they are in an opposite direction. So we're seeing the top one here, and the other one is below. Are you sticking with me? I don't see any comments. I guess you're trying to draw. But anyway, so yeah. So this is the yeah, and there's a little kind of flange here like this. It's kind of hard to show. I don't know if it's really called that, but it's kind of like a flange or a wing or a keel, whatever you want to call it. I don't know why that's specialized there. Okay, so there's two of those. So two pink petals, two white petals, and then we start getting really interesting. So that next part, let me see if I can do it again because I kind of tore it apart, is well, no, that takes too much time. Let's just look at the one we tore apart here. And this does take a little bit more time. Da, 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 da. This is thanks for your patience, guys. Okay. Well, we can see it here. We can see it there. Okay. So what we're looking at now is the next whorl, and that's always the male parts. And so you're figuring like, what the heck is this? How do we make sense of this? And so and that was the individual petal. It kind of looks like a squid, doesn't it? Almost. And it's got this widened part that's magenta, and then this wing part, and then this part that's underneath the pink petals. Okay. All righty. So anyway, this next part are the male parts. And so that's the anthers and filaments. And so this is the male parts. And usually those are pretty simple. You're probably familiar with pollen this time of year. Many of you are suffering from allergies. And so what we're seeing here is the different parts of the male parts, or the andrecium, if you want to get particular. So this is the filament, and then the pollen-bearing anther is here. Now, there aren't two of them, though. There's two sets of three. And so I wasn't able to take a picture of this. I don't know if you can see this, but you can probably see the yellow pollen. Tell me if you can see that. Pollen is generally a yellow color. So, of course, that is like the sperm, the plant's version of sperm, and that's what has to fertilize the female part. And so, anyway, there are two sets of three of these anthers. And so, I don't know if you can see it, but if you, oh, this is so hard to do. You can pull them apart. Oh, there, almost. You see how there's three? You see how there's three? So they are connected at the base of the flower, and then again towards the top, and then there's three separate anthers. So, you can see how biological illustration is useful because you can see all those parts. So basically, if we were to draw this really big, and again, I want to make it the same size as these. It's the same length. So kind of like that. And so there's two sets of those. We'll just draw one set. So they're attached at the top of the flower up here. And then there's sort of like one, and then two. Second one is in the middle. And then 3. These aren't very even. Okay, and then they kinda separate again. They're kinda connected here and here. They separate again, and then there's the pollen. So that's the long, skinny filaments and then the, pollen. And together, these are called the, anthers. So there's basically 2 sets of 3 anthers. Is this getting way too scientific for you? I told you we were gonna do a dissection. Okay, so does that make sense? Does that make sense? Let me show you again. When you pull this part, the colored petals off, then you can see those arched structures, and we drew one of them kind of, blowing up. Sorry, I keep running out of the page here. Okay, tell me if that makes sense. Yeah, Jay says, "Why does the side view look like a question mark?" Why questions are really hard to answer in nature. You can understand anatomy, but not why, but, I mean, they're having to fit in to this heart-shaped, um, pink petals. So, and if you kinda look at this and turn it, you see it's kinda skinnier up here, and then it's inflated here where those 2 sets of 3 anthers are. We've already lost 2 people. They're like, "What? I don't get it." Okay, so then the innermost part is the female part, and, or a gynecium. And so that's this part. So anyway, what happened, again, we'll tear this apart. And again, if we take these off, taking the male parts off, taking the petals off with that flange, and what's left on the very inside is the female part. So again, I want to draw it about the same size as it should be. Oh, I should put it up here so you can see it. Yeah, I want to draw it the same size, right? Like that. So again, we're drawing from this part here. And then yeah, Deb says it makes perfect sense. Good. So this is the ovary. And of course, that gets bigger and bigger as it becomes, pregnant or matures. And then you have some pollen sticking on there, which is the idea. But so there's just one of those. So we have the ovary. So there's the stigma, which is the end that accepts the pollen. We have the style, which is kind of like the filaments. It's the long part. And then we have the actual ovary, which is going to have the seeds in it or the fruit. And a really fun fact is if you've ever had corn on the cob and you're shucking it yourself and taking off the husks, is fresh corn. It's going to have all of those yellow strands, those long yellow strands that we call the corn silk. And so those corn silks are actually the styles, and they're up to a foot long, right? And then the corn you're eating is actually the ovary at the base. And so for every juicy corn kernel you eat and butter, a pollen grain here had to land on that stigma, grow all those inches down the style to fertilize that ovary and become one kernel of corn that you put your butter on. Darren Van der Tang, I've never seen your name before. I hope I said it right. You say really interesting to do a dissection. Fascinating structure. Yeah. And again, this is so fun to do with kids too, isn't it? So yeah, anyway, so we have all the parts. So here's our whole flower, and these guys are pendant, which means they are, they're oriented like this, kind of facing down. And then we have the two outer pink petals, the two white petals. We could even put that inside there for fun. And then we have the male filaments right there. And then we have the female uh, stigma, style, and ovary right there. Very cool. Yeah, Deb says, wow. So isn't that cool? So tell me if you're kind of caught up. Again, it's really fun to take pictures. That really helps, especially if you have a good camera. I mean, this camera of mine is 8 years old, and look how good it takes pictures. This is actually my old camera, but I like to use this because my new camera doesn't take as good of pictures. So it's really helpful to use your camera so that you can scroll in and really see those parts. And you can see they aren't flat. It's kind of hard to show that they're not flat at this scale, but there's a lot of three-dimensional structures to these. Jay says, I think the female part is in the male sketch. Oh, sorry, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. So there we have it. Right. So 2 pink petals, 2 white petals that have the magenta end to them. The male parts, which are 2 sets of 3 anthers, kind of connected at the top and bottom, with 3 pollen sacs each, and then 1 female ovary, the stigma, style, and ovary. Great. Okay. So now if we are going to add some color, I think we just have time to add color here. And then I just wanted to remind you that I love to have people share at the end. So if you're sketching along or if you have any questions, I really love to see people live. And you can share your screen and ask a question or share your sketch. So tell me if you're all caught up. If you've got all these parts. And, this is not a botanical illustration per se. We'd have to take a lot more time and maybe a dissecting scope, which are really fun to have dissecting scopes, especially if you have kids around, because you can look at all kinds of things like, insects and butterfly wings. Jay says, ready to color. Okay, great. So, so the colors we have, okay, so I'm at this small scale, I like to use these really sharp Prismacolor Very Thins. Tell me in the chat box if you use these or what colored pencils you like to use. Great. Deb says you're caught up. Jolynn caught up. And so, I have a few different ones that I've tried to match here. And sometimes if, I have the patience, I'll layer some colors because we actually do have some three-dimensional form here in this beautiful, these petals, they're not flat, right? So I might just start with my stem. I don't know, that's just a little bit kind of a brownish color. Not going to focus on that too much. It's got some red, kind of a reddish brown. But let's really focus on this pink. And so, sometimes I'll do a little swatch first to see if I'm close. And I think that's close enough. I've got another pencil here. It looks like a little darker. And I've got a purple where I can add some shadows because these shadows are kind of purplish. Yeah, okay. And yeah, I think that the key to really realistic colored pencils is really subtle layering. And so it really helps. Like if you start out with one color, oh, sorry, I'm way off here. You start off, no, if you start off with one color, you do that pretty lightly, and then you can put another color on top of it, just really lightly. You don't want to press too much. And then maybe another color for some shadowing. And that gives a really nice 3 dimensions. Okay, so I think I'll start with this lightest pink because there are some light pinks here and kind of darker going towards magenta. And, usually we wouldn't color, on top of this graphite pencil. I mean, this is how I would do it if I'm in the field because I'm not doing a botanical illustration here. Really different kind of technique and time frame. But I'll just put a really light layer here first. I just don't have a lot of patience. So I really love just field sketching, and that's what I usually kind of lead people in. We're not trying to be a formal illustrator, although I do have a degree in that. So I might just put that first layer in and then darken it up. As it just, yeah, it just looks more realistic. And you could go on the side here if you want or with your point. But the idea is just to be kind of really soft layers because you can't really erase colored pencil very well. And especially with this graphite, kind of ugly graphite outline. If you tried to erase, you'd be mixing the graphite with the colored pencil, and that would just kind of smear. So we definitely need to go darker, but some of the lighter areas here are kind of light, like this lighter pink, I think. And these sort of twist. I'm not really showing that, but they kind of twist. So I want to make this darker, so I'll add some of this purplish. Let's see. It's kind of like we showed here. If you look, it's ballooned in the middle. And so there's going to be a little shadow here where it attaches to the stem. So maybe a little shadow at the edge. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that. No, wait a minute. Let me get this a little bit darker. A little bit richer, pinkish. If you don't have this kind of pink, it's hard to make. You just got to have a pencil that is this color. Same with watercolors. Like if you were using watercolors, I would go straight from my quinacridone magenta or quinacridone rose or opera pink. But you just can't make this up. It's not like, mixing a green. You really have to have this. Yeah, I'm still really light, aren't I? And if I wanted to, I don't have them in front of me. I could go get some other pencils. But today, is more about the anatomy than anything else, right? But it's just good to do little strokes. Yeah, when I'm looking at my drawing, it seems like it's the right color, but when I look at the monitor, I see it needs a lot more. And yeah, maybe some of this darker purple because this is sort of inflated here. Yeah, that's needs some more color. Let me see. What else do I have here? This is the wrong set. Sometimes I mix and match. These are the Derwent Color Soft. I'm not sure if these play well with that one. Oh, they're not bad. So sometimes you can mix different brands together and sometimes you can't. Can't get these out of the bag. We're live here. You know we're live humans. No AI bots or AI slop here. So, oh, and that needs to be sharpened. But this is sharp. So what's this do? Well, that's nice. So, we can add more. And I would shade under here a little bit more because it kind of looks pregnant almost. I definitely think it looks a little bit like it's got more red in it, doesn't it? Does, huh? It looks like it's got more red in it. So that's also what's nice about colored pencils is, again, you can just keep layering them if you haven't gone overboard, if you haven't pushed too hard. So I have this reddish, although it's pretty warm. So I don't know if that'll work. But it is fun just to really subtly layer different shades together. And it eventually begins to look interesting. But with flowers, you don't have to be exact with a lot of plants. They're going to vary in their shade of color based on how much sun they're getting or their health or the cultivated variety. Oh, I think that's getting a little closer. And which one's this? This is a darker purple. Maybe I can shade some more with this purple under here. Now I'm starting to fill up my the paper. What's it called? The texture of the paper. So it's getting a little harder. But you see how I'm trying to add a little shadow here because this is sort of like it's when we see it on the side again, it's fatter here in the middle. So that means it's going to reflect light a little bit differently. Something like that. Okay. Anyway, and then this inside part, it's kind of hard to show white on white. That's why I like to often draw on toned paper, although the toned paper wouldn't look very good with these pinks probably. It would kind of be muddy. So I might just add a bit of there's some yellow coloration in here. And then there's some magenta. See, there's yellow in there. So really subtle yellow. And then there's this deeper magenta on either side of this wing or flange or keel, whatever you want to call it. Kind of like that. All right. Okie dokie. Yeah, I could get more. I wonder what no, this is that warm orange. So it's always good to have a big pile. Again, you can look at this close up. Just So you keep going. Remember, we're going to share in a minute if you are brave enough to share. See, I have a whole box of colored pencils here. And so I could try to find something to make this a little bit, maybe I could use that. That's the thing that kind of frustrates me with colored pencils is you got to have so many of them and you got to keep sharpening them. So that's why I often use watercolor, and you may have joined me for my magenta. What is it called? Magnolia workshop we did the other day, which I mistakenly erased. So you probably can't see the replay. Although I'll add it to the Colorful Botanicals course. I do have the original, but I'm unable to upload it to the same link. Anyway, it is fun to just layer, to just keep layering. And I might want to put a little shadow in here. This gray. Because again, these are kind of inflated, so they would cast a little bit of shadow on these female petals. But those female petals do have a little pink in them. Maybe I could add just a little bit of pink. So with colored pencils, you can go really light or heavier, just like graphite. So they're going to give you different values based on how hard you push. Okay, I'm going to get going and enjoy the rest of this weekend, and I hope you do too. And we'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.